Catherine's there. That's her name. Catherine French.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi.
So where are you at? The PS Panhandle State classroom?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, I'll be right back in a second.
Okay.
Hey, Sue,
Yeah.
I understand that you guys have been getting some rain out there.
Well, we haven't right here, but there has been some around us.
Yeah.
Nothing that I would call torrential or even significant.
Okay. Let's see.
Well, hi, Jim. Pretty good, actually.
Oh, let's see.
You can't buy the ticket for the dinner at the Chuck Wagon Feast.
No.
You have to buy them before.
You have to buy them before so that we know exactly who's going to be there and how many.
Two.
Okay. I've got the tickets to the museum if you'll come by later,
You'll
tomorrow.
You'll just have them there, or I can get them sometime.
Sure.
As long as the ticket's there, you get in and get fed, huh?
Yeah, yeah, I hope so.
Well, hopefully it's a good chicken fried steak. You can't go wrong with that.
That's right. Have you had any conversation with Julie Dinger?
No, I sent her an email, but I haven't seen anything.
You know, R.D. Schultz died.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
Who?
R.D. Schultz.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I didn't know R.D. as much as I knew Emma. You know, I had her for teacher.
Did you?
Yeah.
So many people signed up for this.
Well, we've got a few.
Hi, Arla. Hi, Fred. Oh.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'll be right back.
Pretty good. Well, and this is Catherine that's doing the program. Lydia is signing in.
Oh, okay.
From remote. You know.
Well. Bring the jacket. I went back and got one. Did you? I figured I could always take it off.
Yeah, I've gotten so I carry one everywhere, a sweater at least.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm a real wuss.
I'm always cold, so I just
I
go
know.
prepared.
Yeah. Well, I walk into restaurants and it's always
Oh, my
way too
God.
Oh,
cold.
my gosh.
Wrong.
Yeah, bro.
Oh, this is horrible.
Oh,
I thought lady works here quite a bit. I said, you know, told him, I said, man, I don't come in here and eat. He said, well, there's a lot of people don't, so we go out there and people come in and sit and eat.
Yeah.
Won't come in, it's too cold. It's too cold?
Too
why
cold.
don't
Too
they
cold,
do
yeah.
something?
They put a whole new system in last year ago. They put a whole new system. They raised. I thought they had milk. Well, they could. I just considered, well, they don't have people that put cold weather back there in the wood.
Yeah.
Out here in the front, because it was cold before. I figured this old system, they had to keep it all cold. And lo and behold, It didn't change. And I
Well-
talked to her and I said, man, it's too cold. I said, cause she wears a jacket out there in camp, right?
Yeah.
Cities and stuff. And she said, can Andrew do something? She said, she can't do that either. She pointed right up and wants to see it right on this. So that's the freeze the temperature. They're the ones that control it. So we don't have no control. We control that.
I know the other night we went in there. And it was
Welcome
cold.
back.
We left, we took it home.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's just,
Oh,
as she said, we.
Oh, she
I
loved
know
you.
a lot of people have. Well.
Well,
Say, we should be able to be that way, because that's a whole new system. But you know, I didn't ask if they had a song. But, you know, we played one bigger for sure. We didn't have to go up there. It was working away for a whole new system. I read a normal.
So Curtis Mason goes in there to Brahms to eat pretty often. He's not here yet.
Oh, he's not gonna be here.
He
He
froze to
isn't?
death in there.
No, he's at Tri-County.
oh, well, there's a lot of people
Yeah,
that are in
Tri-County.
Tri-County. Yeah.
He's probably winning
No,
door
not
prizes.
bad.
Yeah, I talked to him, he said, I won't be going. They had free barbecue.
Well, I'm on barbecue. My husband was upset because he.
There was a good crowd, don't bother him, they probably did a lot for him.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, free meal, free gifts.
yeah, yeah.
So, I don't care that much to
Me neither.
get that big. of a
Well,
crowd.
I don't mind if they've got some earth-shattering news that I need to hear, but usually,
Or some outstanding speaker.
yeah, they used to have some really good speakers for Tri-County and BTCI,
Yeah,
but they've quit doing that.
yeah, I gone to any of those in years. I
Yeah.
It just seems like it goes on and on. Yeah.
Well, guys, I think we'll get started.
How did you ask him for this?
If everybody can see, Catherine French, here is a,
That's where I thought you, when I talked to him.
His funeral is tomorrow. 11:00 at Kent.
They're marrying something.
we'll let that get done first. Catherine French is a mining engineer. She attended school in the Texas Panhandle at Farrington. She then went to college at the New Mexico Tech, getting a Bachelor of Science degree in mining engineering and a minor in petroleum engineering. She went to work at the U.S. Department of Energy's test site in Nevada. And then in 1992, started to work at Los Alamos National Laboratory. In Nevada, she became a supporter of ranchers' rights against new laws that would have been detrimental to ranchers. Her side work at Los Alamos with local Native American tribes got her interested in rock carving and inscription. In 2007, she moved to her birthplace in Kansas and has worked with ranchers in southeast Colorado and the Panhandle to help ranchers preserve their rock inscription panels and to protect property rights. She also has interacted with some of the ranchers in the Panhandle of southeast Colorado who have mineral deposits, old mines, they potential oil and gas in their property. This assistant in geology and mining economics helps landowners. And she's here tonight to tell us about Cimarron County.
And this is, I'm sorry, Catherine, you're talking about?
Catherine French.
Yes,
Catherine French.
French, like French people, French language.
Okay, I see Lydia Gray on the screen and are you Catherine?
Yeah, that's me right here. See the white
Did
hat?
you, at Los Alamos, did you ever know a Larry Schultz?
I've heard the name, but I didn't know him personally.
Okay, yeah, he spent a career and retired.
Okay.
His dad just died and I just wondered if
Oh.
you had known him and thought you might be interested about
Oh,
that.
so
A lot
sad
of
to hear.
people out telling us.
So anyway, shall I go ahead and start?
Yes, please.
Okay. Give you a little further background, the reason we graduated from Perryton High School in Perryton, Texas, was because my stepfather had taken time out from his engineering career to become a Lutheran pastor. And so we were assigned the church there in the last 2 years of my high school. Very good school in terms of academics and sports. Now, before that, we had lived in Western Colorado and had been around, the uranium mines and coal and stuff like that, oil shale. So that got me really interested in geology and chemistry, which were my things. And so I then got scholarships to New Mexico Tech and work study programs and ended up being low cost. So I graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Mining Engineering and a background in petroleum engineering. And then I went to work at the Nevada test site for 9 years. And I actually got into construction and equipment, working with equipment, and then also quality assurance, equipment calibration, things like that. Then I went to Los Alamos for a number of years before I came back to Kansas in 2007 to take care of my ailing father and grandmother. So anyway, my interest in the Panhandle was having lived at least in been around parts of the area. But then also I knew when I was in New Mexico Tech, we knew of some people in Union County. And of course, there was interest in the copper deposits up there. There had been some rumors of a little bit of uranium discoveries in what's called the Morrison Formation that extends into Cimarron County. It's mostly buried by a lot of other stuff, but it does outcrop there. So anyway, I did a presentation for the No Man's Land Society. Oh, it was like 2 or 3 years ago, if I remember. And I came out there and personally did it there. And so now that we've gone past COVID, we can do the Zoom meeting. One of the things I will do is I'll do a presentation and then I've got some of the mineral samples here and show you. So let me see about sharing the screen. Okay. All right, can you see this PowerPoint?
Yes. there it
Okay,
is.
all right. So this is about, it's one of the things that you really have to dig for the literature, and there's not a whole lot of stuff, but I'm very persistent. One of the things I learned at Los Alamos was how to dig through databases, both online and in paper documents in libraries. So let me go to copper is a main metal that has been found in veins located in the sandstone formation and also volcanic plugs and dikes near the Black Mesa of the Oklahoma Panhandle, northeast Oklahoma and southeastern Colorado. Now I want to mention that the volcanic plugs are mainly in the southern portion of the Black Mesa area, especially in New Mexico. And there were quite a number of companies, copper companies in late 1800s, early 1900s that got quite a bit of copper from there. Unfortunately, we don't have all the records. In the Oklahoma Panhandle, it's mainly the sheep's pen sandstone that contains veins of copper ore, and that's mainly in the Panhandle area. There's a little bit of stuff that is in Baca County of Colorado. But anyway, the sheepstone is kind of a light gray to brown sandstone, and it's up to 20 feet thick and with a gentle dip towards the south. There are more than 120 what they call classic plugs. These are basically volcanic vents that then later on hydrothermal or geothermal activity deposit copper, a little bit of silver there. Most of the plugs and dikes, like I said, are in the state of New Mexico. When we look at the panhandle, copper is found mainly in the, again, like I said, the sheep pen sandstone as copper oxide minerals, which is malachite, azurite, and the original sulfide mineral, chalcocite. There appears to have been a little bit what's called chalcopyrite. Many of you may have heard of pyrite. Chalcopyrite is basically pyrite, iron sulfide that also has some copper in it. So it's a combination of copper, iron, and sulfur. There are veins of varying widths that have been mined, and sometimes silver has been found. There's various theories about how this copper was formed in these veins. Early geologists used to say that the copper and silver was leached out of the black basalt on the Black Mesa, but that doesn't explain some of the, like for example, the gold veins in Baca County. There's quite a few gold mines in Baca County, and they're a little bit far away from Black Mesa, so it doesn't quite always fit what geologists would think about the deposition. There are other theories that geothermal activities were associated with volcanic uplifts and outflows later on, and that there were especially before the black basalt that formed the top of Black Mesa. I've talked to geologists, and a lot of them believe that the copper veins and other things actually formed before the basalt came. So the other thing, in Oklahoma, for example, there's a number of places where there are red beds of what's called the Permian age that are exposed. You'll see some of these things like in southwest and southern Oklahoma. In fact, in the 1960s, early 70s, there was a big copper mine called the Creta mine that mined copper from the red beds there. Out in the Mesa, some of the mines have had copper content as high as 41% copper. So some of these things could be very rich. And again, it's just one of these things about geology that, you'll see these veins sometimes be that big, and then as you go along, they narrow, and sometimes they widen again. So that's not uncommon in volcanic activity. You see, when you have metal deposits, to see variations in the width and in the metal content. And like I said, sometimes there's silver and gold found with the copper. In a few mines in southeastern Colorado, there's mines where they just find gold, like the Independence mine. Now, as far as the copper ore, for the most period of the production, the ore was shipped by wagons to stations at Lamar, Colorado, and then the smelters in Pueblo, Colorado. And that was kind of expensive. Also, there was a company that erected a mill in Baca County from which some ore was shipped to Pueblo. If the ore was not processed or concentrated before shipment, then a lot of waste rock was shipped with the ore. So some of the ore contained titanium, manganese, and strontium, in addition to the gold and silver. And occasionally we do find uranium minerals, like I said, mainly in the formations below the sheep pen. As I understand, there's over 200 prospects and mines in a tri-state area, and they're usually small pits dug to do sampling of the rocks and to find the ore worth mining and possibly start it. Now, some of these actually are small shafts. So whenever you're out in these areas, you always have to just be on the lookout and just make sure that, if you're in the area, if you're on land near the Black Mesa, some one of the landowners has let you come on, just be aware that there could be a shaft. And in the lower, if you look here, I don't know if you can see my pin, but down here, there's a dump, and then there's a cut in the upper part of the picture. So these are two places where they were sampling for copper. When it comes to sandstone, normally it was found in the lower parts of the sheet pan, and this sheet pan sandstone has been confused with some other formations, and this is the issue with geology. They got some geological charts that finally geologists have agreed to, but in early days there was disagreement as to which formation was what. Now there is a shale bed member underneath the sheet pan sandstone that has green color on it, but no copper in it. And this is the Sloan Canyon Formation. And that green color comes from a mineral called chlorite. It looks green, but it has no copper values. And so some people shipped tons of the green chlorite and lost money. So you'll see, I've talked to a couple people out there and I said, yeah, and I'll show you a sample of the chlorite and how it differs from the ore. In Oklahoma, most mines either have no names or are named for the family that owns the land upon which the mine is located. There are several mines and prospects named after the Wiggins family, many of which had high copper values but limited tonnage. There's also the Lavery mines and pit. Okay, and here's a picture in the upper left. You'll see a sample that I got from one of the landowners, and they have copper on the copper vein, and they actually had a shaft there, a small one. And so I took the sample and split it open, and you'll see on the outside it looks kind of dark and scrunchy, and that's from mostly the copper chalcocite that's being oxidized. And then this is the full oxidization here, and you'll see the halo. This is the original down here in the lower right. You'll see in the center, you'll see the dark original sulfide ore mixed in with the sandstone. And then you'll see the halo from when there was oxidization. Most of this was occurring with probably a combination of warm waters from geothermal activity that eventually stopped. It also can occur over time with deposits near the surface where the rainwater comes down and oxidizes the sulfide ore. This sample, let's see, I got this from Lavery, and this is iron, what's called goethite. It's a iron oxide with a little bit of copper oxide in a limestone type of sandstone just above the sheet pan sandstone. So you have some of the stuff that's above, and probably some of this was actually lifted up with the geothermal activity. So some of this things in the sheet pan sandstone got moved up to the formation just above it a little bit, but there's not a whole lot. There's only a few specific spots we found. All right, table 1, this is one of the early layouts from the geological time. And these are the ages in terms of the older is at the bottom. We have the Triassic, which is the oldest, Jurassic, and then Cretaceous. And so up to the Pliocene and Pliocene. And so these are the formations that initially were marked, and the description, for example, the sheet pan sandstone is a tan to buff sandstone, thin bedded, and pretty massive, up to 68 feet. The Exeter sandstone at this time was identified as the white to pink sandstone, cross bedded, and then the Toledo formation is the type of gypsum, almost in New Mexico, it's really a limestone type of formation. So I'm going to go to the next slide. This is another one that was developed in the 1980s. And again, Triassic age, Jurassic age, and Cretaceous. So the Purgatoire, they finally grouped these together, and the sheet pen sandstone is the bottom part of the Purgatoire formation. And you see here that the Exeter, and you still see people referring to this, and they sometimes call it different names. So, but in both cases, the sheet pen sandstone lays over the Morrison Formation, or what's called the Sloan Canyon Formation. And remember, at the top of the Sloan Canyon is that green chlorite formation. And then below that is some members like the Travisser and the other beds that actually have some uranium. There are people who have, oh, this is in the 1970s. There's some people who found some uranium nodules, basically uranium minerals in the nodules. And they're running about 0.2%, up to 1% uranium. So the nodules themselves are pretty concentrated, but the whole formation was very sparse. So let me go to the next one. And this is from 2012. And this is the way that this report, and is one of the sources I got, and then Lucas in 1987. So basically how they grouped them together, again, there's the sheet pen sandstone is part of this group. And then you have the Exeter sandstone, although they call it the Entrada here. And then the Morrison up here. So again, it's not consistent the way they group these things. But again, it's one of these things where this is probably the more accurate because they had a lot more studies come out there. And the Dakota sandstone, this one also has in New Mexico has been a place where uranium deposits were found. So the Morrison and the Dakota were two of the, if you go to like the Grants Uranium District, that these formations were pretty rich with uranium over there. While there are not many records of copper mining, there are still a few still available, and I'll give you references. One of the primary history references I use is called the Copper Handbook. The Copper Handbook was written every year, starting in like 1870s through the early 1900s, almost 1920s. And what they did is they, for each year, they would go and, look at certain different copper mines in the world, not just the United States. So there's several different references to the copper mines in New Mexico, and a few that were in Black Mesa. Now it's interesting that some of the copper companies that were mining in New Mexico had offices there in Kenton. So Kenton, Oklahoma used to be a sort of mining capital for a while. In 1899, Governor Barnes touted the richness of the area and talked about the various amounts of copper. Apparently he made it sound richer than it was, but it is true that there are places where you can find copper anywhere from 5% up to 40%. In 1901, there were some settlers that came from Woodward, Oklahoma, and they formed a colony. They had been previously up at the Yukon goldfields, and they were called the Klondikers. Again, it was one thing to be a gold miner, but to try to mine the copper was completely different geology. And a lot of these guys are the people who thought that the green chlorite rock was the copper rock. So a lot of them lost money. Then we talked about several, Lavery and Wiggins. There's a Lavery pit that's on private property located on the road going north from Kenton to Pritchett, Colorado. From 1900 to 1917, it's recorded that just over 21,000 pounds of copper, 356 ounces of silver, and over 11 ounces of gold were produced from existing records. This is within the Black Mesa area only. The last record of production is 1925. But there were other records that were not accounted for by the geologists at Oklahoma and United States Geological Survey. Oftentimes, individual miners and companies kept records themselves. And when I when I was a student at New Mexico Tech, I worked part-time at the New Mexico Bureau of Mines. And one of the things that was common was that we'd get these mine production records that nobody had ever seen before. You know, some widow or some family said, well, you know, we found these in our files and thought we would donate it to the New Mexico Bureau of Mines Museum, which was good. So there was never, in those years, you know, there's a lot, you were in an isolated area and oftentimes people did not record everything. This is a map and it's basically showing the contour of the formation. These are what, you see these nearly vertical lines. Those are the thicknesses of the sandstone, or at least the elevation, I should say. But the thing is that you also see where we have the Wiggins mines. There's quite a number of them. The Labrey mine, right? There's the Labrey number 2, Labrey number 1. And that's north of Devil's Tombstone. And it's right near Labrey Butte, where that's at. So in this area of just below Baca County, this is one of the maps that shows where some of these mines were at. Let me look here. Here was, like I talked about, the fact that let me try something here. Let me see if this is. Can you still see this? Can you still? Okay. Let me go to the page here. Oh. All right. Let me go to. All right. Here was an ad from 1906, and it was called the Ores and Metals magazine. And this was where you could buy equipment and properties were sold. And here was one person advertising first-class copper prospect for sale, location New Mexico, a new field. And this was W.D. Mackey, who had his office in Kenton, Oklahoma. And so this is very common that the New Mexico mines had their office in Kenton. So Kenton used to be a bustling metropolis, as I understand. All right. In New Mexico, they had the Fort Pitt and the Satter Copper Company had the deepest mine depth at 380 feet. Satter was the president until he got ousted at a shareholders meeting. And so the ore was 14% copper and 15 ounces of silver per ton. And that's pretty good at today's market prices. Copper Chief Mining Company had around 200 acres, running 3% copper and 10 ounces of silver per ton of ore. Pittsburgh Copper Company had 7% copper. San Miguel had over 25% copper. In Colorado, one well-known mine was the Independence Mine that opened in 1889, and it's not pretty close to the Carrizo Creek, just on the other side of the Colorado or Oklahoma-Colorado border, but it is hard to get to. I've been up in the area just south of it, and the roads are very rugged. The data is recorded at 524 feet long, and there's some other gold mines in that area too. Now uranium, this was the United States Geological Survey did a sample of like the Cimarron River and the springs and soil and stuff. And they found that for the most part, the content was very, very low, except for the Morrison Formation, which had quite a bit high in the Morrison, where the Morrison Formation exposed, you'll find, like I said, a higher uranium content. In 1975, American Nuclear Corporation leased 11,000 acres southwest of Boise City. And the Triassic red beds were the initial target. And they were scheduled to decide if they would do any kind of mining, such as in situ leaching, but they never decided publicly. Again, like I said, radioactive rocks with uranium have been found in the Morrison Formation near Kenton and other formations as the Exeter. Now, coal has been found south of Boise City at South Carrizo Creek near the New Mexico border. And there's an abandoned town by the name of Mineral that was set up for it. It's located near the old Santa Fe Trail and was in existence from the 1880s to 1911. There are thin beds of lignite coal found in the Purgatory Formation in the far west part of the county and about 18 inches thick. There are also some thin outcrops found in the northern part of the county, as I've been told. But again, they're just not commercial. From the standpoint of the grade of coal being lignite and only being 18 inches, it was not even back in the old days when coal was king, it was not usually very economical. All right. One of the primary geological reports is from the Oklahoma Geological Society, circular number 86, and it's called the Copper Deposits in Sheep Fen Sandstone, Triassic in Cimarron County. And this was written by Robert Fay. Another source is the Oklahoma Geological Survey Bulletins 34 and 64 and circular 67. So you can go to the Oklahoma Geological Survey website and look at their documents. And I think most of these are PDFs that you can download. So I mean, I downloaded the PDFs at no charge. At least I did about 12 years ago. And then here's a list of the documents, the websites for it. You know, if you want I sent the file to Susan. So if you want to, you can contact her and she can forward the file to you. So if you want to use these websites. And there's another book, there's some, one of the things at the top, what's called the clastic deposits. That's a very interesting if you want to learn about these volcanic events. And the second one is, you know, the copper deposits associated with clastic plugs. So anyway, there are these references if you just dig for them. You know, it took me a while to find them, but eventually I did find them. And then also on this third page of references, map of uranium samples in Oklahoma. There's a geological map number 25. And then if you go to thediggings.com and go to places, you can look at what were some of the, it doesn't have all of the claims, but it has at least some of them. And it tells you what, you know, what they were mining there. And so let me, all right, so one of the things I did want to show, if you can see this, I'll try to show you. This is a piece of iron oxide, hematite. These are iron nodules. This is another iron nodule that we find out there. I can't remember which formation is, but you find these like there's places, especially near the Lavery pit, where you find these iron oxide secretions. So apparently there was a lot of pyrite deposited that became oxidized and then collected into these nodules. There's also, I want to show you let's see if you can see this. Those are called goethite crystals. And you'll see some of these where the iron oxide mineral pseudomorphs or fills in what used to be cuprite type of crystals. So we know that there was copper sulfite or copper oxide minerals, and then the iron waters, the geological processes removed the copper but replaced it with iron, but they retained the shape of the original mineral. And let's see. And then also this is the rock that got everybody in problem. This is what's called chlorite. And let's see. Okay. And basically, what you see here, you can't see it too well, but basically this is completely green, and it's very much almost like a sandstone type of rock. There you go. And it has no variation in its green color compared to the other things that I showed you. And let's see, here's that sample I was had in the photo, and you can see where there's variations in this copper ore. So this would probably run about 15 to 20% copper. And then this is that rock that I had in the photo, and you can see where it deposited along this line here. So there's obviously a gap, and it was filled in with the geological processes that brought the mineral rich waters, and they deposited the iron crystals here. So that's the presentation. Do you have any questions or comments?
I'd always heard that those plastic plugs were mined for copper. Did they go after them first, or did most of the copper come from places other than those plugs? And how deep did they go down the plug to mine those for copper?
I think the deepest in New Mexico, the deepest shaft was like 525 feet. Yeah, so they were following, that this stuff just kept going down and down. As far as, I can't remember, I think if I remember correctly, the Kenton mine started first, and then the New Mexico ones came in a little bit later. And the ones in New Mexico are a little bit different geology, because again, these are volcanic type of, where there's a lot of massive amounts of rock being strewn up by the volcano. It's almost like what's called a breccia. A breccia is where a volcano comes up and pulls some of the side rock with it, and then it solidifies. And so you have these different types of rocks inside this volcanic vent. But then there's a lot of minerals that came up, either with the volcano or later on afterwards, like when the magma body was cooling and some of the mineral solutions came up. There's different theories about how these mineral solutions came up. And there hasn't been a lot of like, I'm trying to think of this, radionuclide study, for example, tracing the different isotopes and looking at the isotope placement within the deposit. That's one of the things I'll tell you. It's interesting in mineral deposits. Sometimes you'll see where the isotopes show you one type of, in one part of the deposit, there's a different set of isotope structure or suite of isotopes, like for the iron, the sulfur, and the different oxygen and carbon. And then when you go to the other part of the deposit, it has a completely variation in the composition of isotopes. So a lot of times there's phases that some of these deposits go through. So
Out there west of Kenton on the blacktop going up the dry Cimarron, there's a plastic plug that the road made a cut right through, and you get a cross section of that plastic plug. Have you looked at it?
oh yeah, that's pretty nice. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, as far as, there were resources to the settlers. There was some coal, and again, they had the iron that could be smelted with the coal, and they had the copper. Again, the coal was hard. Part of the issue is, again, the coal was only 18 inches thick at the most, and it was a low grade lignite. So that's why they never really established a smelter there at Kenton. Everything went up to Colorado.
Miss French.
Yes.
I'm Lydia Gray. And several years ago, I was on a tour. We just had an individual lady that took us on a tour, and we were on the south side of the Black Mesa. And she took us to these, she said they were copper mines, and they were, I don't know what, 300 foot back into the underneath the Black Mesa. Which
Mhm.
mines were those? Were those the Labrie mines?
No, if they were on the south side, that would have been like the Pittsburgh company. Let me go.
Oh, okay.
Let
Okay.
me go to, let's see. I go look here. That's either like the Fort Pitt Company, Copper Chief. Again, like Copper Chief, they had 20 acres of claims.
Wow. Okay.
The San Miguel mine. So these, I don't have all the references on those. I didn't post those because I was concentrating mainly on the Oklahoma, but I do have some stuff in the New Mexico Bureau of Mines also.
Okay. Okay. How did they dig those? Did they use pickaxes or did they blast them, or how did they make those? Because it just looked like they were solid rock.
Well, if you have a minute, I'll show you a hand drill. Okay. Give me
You
about
bet.
30 seconds.
Okay.
You don't have to move pretty fast for 30 seconds. It's like to say, oh, give me a second. Well, a second's a fast time to get through talking. Yes. Don't set yourself up.
Time's up.
Yeah. Where you at?
You were counting.
Yeah. Yeah. Beep, 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 time's up.
How was our dude? 80, he would have been 88 the next day. He was okay. He was actually 87.
All right.
I think one day away from 88.
All right, this right here is a one long iron tool with you can see it's got a pointed bit that goes into the rock, and at this end you have one person holds this rod, this drill bit, and the other person is using a hammer, and they would just drill this hole into the rock, and then they would put in the old days they initially used gunpowder, then later on they would use when dynamite came out, that really helped. And so what they would do is drill the holes out, and then they would fill it up with the dynamite, and then have the primers put in, and then the initiator lines, and then they'd light the fuse and get out of the place and let it blast the rock. And then they would come in, and at least most of those mines there were not mechanized where you had a loader, but you had, this is from a silver mine in New Mexico that I picked up. This was dropped in the silver mine in 1893 when the mine closed. The United States in 1893 went off the gold, silver standard. It only went on gold. So the silver mines lost a lot of money. And so in New Mexico, that was I found those things in near Silver City, New Mexico. And so, but up at the mines, whether it was Kenton or the volcanic plugs, it was, at least back in those days, it was hand drilling, and people were paid, like $3, $1 to $2 a day to be underground, and they would have candles and that they would have to light their way underground. Now, eventually by the 1920s and 1930s, they started getting, well, actually before that, they came out with carbide lamps. These are little lamps that have, in the bottom of the container, you have carbide crystals, and in the top you have a water reservoir. And as the water drips down into the carbide, it creates a carbide gas, and then it comes out a vent and it's lit. and it provides a light for you. So that's good in mines other than coal. It's not good because the flame will ignite methane from coal mines. But in metal mines, it was good. So they probably, and for the most part, at least in that part of New Mexico, I think until like the late 1800s, they were using candles, and then they started using carbide lamps, which were not exactly cheap back then. But I have some of my own that I had bought when I was a student in college, and the carbide lamps are pretty reasonable, and if you keep them clean, they do provide you good light. But starting in the 1930s and 1940s, they came out with these battery packs that had an electric line that came to a lamp that you put on your helmet, and that would shine the light for you. So as far as where the area we're talking about, it was probably very blunt force. It was very rudimentary, not too much different from probably the way they did things back in Roman times, because these type of drill bits have been used for centuries in Europe mining. So, but it was, after gunpowder was developed, they started using these type of things, tools to drill holes and put the gunpowder in and light it, get it to blast open. So does that help?
Thank you. It does. I'm sorry about the dog barking. He saw a kitty. I have another question for you. The gold mines in Backett County, what creek were they next to? Are they next to Bear Creek or?
Yeah, Bear Creek and Carrizo Creek,
Oh, really?
two-
Okay, awesome.
two main areas.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
But the key thing is that with, gold, any type of mine, you have to think about access, and then you have to think about how you process the ore and concentrate the mineral. Gold, you can concentrate without chemical treatment usually, so, which helps. Any other questions?
So the mining was, you said late in the late 1800s and when they started mining roughly, or you may have said that, I may have been not paying enough attention.
Late 1880s.
1880, okay.
And part of it was just the Native American, the Apaches. There were still some Kiowas and Apaches running around, at least in a little bit there. It wasn't too bad, but now, like in 1860s, it was pretty bad. But then also it's just a matter of, people actually coming out to that area, And for Kenton, this also relates to, the area of the Oklahoma Territory and the no man's land area, and, settlers being allowed to come there and stuff like that.
Is there any feasibly, any kind of mining feasibility out there yet? Is there any copper deposits or any deposits that would be profitable to try to mine today?
Well, like I said, the classic plugs, you look at that one mine that went down 500 feet. It's one of these things where you just have somebody that needs to know what they're doing in terms, and mining exploration is usually done with a combination of surface geology and then also drill holes. You have to establish, like if you have a vertical deposit, let's say this is your deposit, I then have to have a drill that comes in from the side that intercept it, core it, or get some samples so I can see what kind of values I have at certain depths. So, again, we know, and the other thing is, who owns the minerals? I think some of these things are on private property, I think most, if I remember, most of the New Mexico copper mines are on private property now. So,
So a copper company could lease those mineral rights and produce them if they thought there was something there.
yeah, and the fact that there was silver recovered would be a great incentive.
Yeah.
But there's and I heard that one of the plastic plugs actually was running a little bit high in uranium, like 2% uranium, which is be more valuable getting the uranium out rather than the other stuff. So anyway, it just goes to show that there was a lot of stuff going on in Kenton. And like I said, I was just surprised at the number of companies as I was going through the literature, like the Copper Handbook, how many companies had their offices in Kenton. So,
Yeah, that'd be shocking to us folks that didn't know that.
Pretty impressive, all right.
I understand there's like 2,000 or 3,000 people at one time. Any other questions?
Thank you, Ms. West. That was really interesting. I loved it.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I was there so I could show you what these things look like, the mineral samples, because this, for example, is a very pretty crystal sample. And you find these every once in a while in the formations that are above the sheep pen sandstone. So, and they're very pretty, but they're not really worth a whole lot. They're just, nice to look at.
When you say you find it, it's you have to drill down to find it. It's not laying on top of the ground.
Well, like these things I found just on the surface,
Oh, okay.
but I knew where to look. I knew where to look in the cracks and the fault zones. There are some ancient faults out there, and a lot of these faults got filled up. Like I said, here's an example of this is one crack, that area that got filled up. So a lot of these places had cracks and faults that later on got filled up with minerals. So when you recognize the signs, it's easy to find those. Also, when I worked in Las Vegas at the test site, there was one of the Los Alamos scientists was a guy named Bert Slemons, and he was a very good geologist, and he was called an expert fault finder. He knew how to use simple methods of being able to find geological faults, just looking on the surface. So.
When you say find the fault, it was a crack where the deposit was in. Is that what you're?
Yeah, at least, when you look at some of the copper deposits, and when some of the people were sinking shafts out there on the Black Mesa area, some of these look like they were on small fault areas. So there are some small faults out there. They're very hard to see though, unless you have a trained eye to look for them. And some of them are so hard, you almost have to walk on top of them. So.
Well, Catherine, I think if nobody else has any questions, we want to say thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah, thank you.
I think that's a wonderful range rider hat.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, if you want, I do come out there from time to time. I'm probably going to come out there in November. But if somebody would like, I know some of the landowners, and there are more, they always said I was welcome to come and, look for crystals like this one. I know exactly where I found this one, and there's probably more waiting there. So, and these, I mean, while they don't really have high market value in terms of the mineral specimen market, I mean, they're just sort of neat thing that you could say, hey, this is from the Kenton area, and you know, one of the nice geological things that happened there. So there's a lot of geological things that happened there. It would just help if I would like to see more geological studies there, especially in terms of chemical and isotope analysis. So, but that takes money. So, or it takes like a graduate student who wants to do a graduate paper. Now there is one graduate paper on the uranium potential of Cimarron County, and I found recently. So he has some interesting things about that.
I never would have thought the uranium there. So that was an eye opener.
Yeah. Well, like I said, that there one classic plug in New Mexico, there's one place where it's running 2%. That's pretty high.
And what being over just across the line into Mexico, what you're talking about?
No, I mean, it's actually some ways, past the border.
It's what I mean, just a little into Mexico a little bit. So.
Yeah, it's on the south side of, when I talk about the New Mexico classic plugs, we're talking about the southwest area of Black Mesa.
Okay.
So if you know people in that area, it might be worthwhile talking to them and saying, hey, in the past they produced copper and silver. So.
Well,
I take it nobody came up with any mining records for you?
The what?
Nobody came up with any mining records for you?
Well, I heard that there used to be a museum there in Kenton, but I think they closed down. But I understood that they had some records, and I was out there, 2010. Yeah, 2010, before they closed down. And I did see a little bit, and I wanted to get Xerox copies, but they were not willing to, let me take them and make copies. So I don't know, if somebody knows what happened to that museum, that
It's
place.
still open.
Oh, it
It's
is?
still open,
It's by
Okay.
appointment.
but it's only open in the summer.
On weekends.
on
Oh, okay.
weekends.
Okay.
And I'm sure that they'd let you take pictures of the records
Okay.
and stuff. There's a lot in there.
Yeah, well, at the time I didn't have a very good camera. I had only a cheap flip phone. So. But I remember seeing, and it's not there anymore, but there was an ore car and there was a scraper and there was all kinds of mining tools,
Yeah, the ore car's still there.
Okay. So anyway, now, Sue, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Hey, did I give the museum one of these copper ore specimens?
Yes, I believe you did when you gave us the program.
Yeah, okay. And
Came out and did the program.
yeah, you should put it on display.
Yeah,
And I'll probably give you one of these iron nodules also. They're pretty cool. So. All right, well, if you get, I would ask if you guys hear of anything or see new stuff, let Sue know so she could let me know. And I'll let her know if I've come across new stuff.
yeah.
well, don't think I'll be out there looking around, but I wouldn't be able to see it, know what I'm seeing, but it was out there looking around.
Well, you might hear something.
It'd have to be a sign say, here I am. Or something like that. This is what you're looking for right here.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
You too.